we want to give materials to the ship. So if we go into rendered mode down here, you can go to rendered. We're in Blender render, so it doesn't look very cool. So everybody switch to cycles render. I'm going to turn on my screencast keys. So once again, everything I push, you can see down there. Now if you go into rendered mode with Shift Z, it's starting to look a little more natural. Okay, so choose your hull object, and we're going to drag this out a bit and go to our materials. We're going to make a new material and label it hull. So by default, the first material you add, it applies it to the whole ship. So like if we changed it pink, that's what it would be. But we're going to use the principled shader, and we'll just leave it, let's just add some roughness to it, and we'll leave it like that for now. So now let's add some color to these engines. So go up here, make a new material, and call it like engine cap. And if you look at reference images of the early ones, they look kind of metallic. So go to your principled shader. We're going to make this, they're like red, dark red. And add some, make it all the way metallic, so drag metallic all the way up, and then add some roughness. And now the way you assign a material just to that cap is you have to go into edit mode. So I'm going to hit tab. So now I'm in edit mode, and I'm going to deselect everything with A. And I'm in edge select mode, so if I hover over an edge and push L, it does linked selection. If you had a vertex select mode, you'd have to hover over a vertex, push L, and now hit assign. And it doesn't look like anything happened, but if you go into rendered mode, something totally happened. And you can visualize this in the viewport. The simplest way is going here and going to material. And now I see kind of what my materials are looking like. If you get a bunch of complex materials and you're in this material viewport shading, things could slow down. So if you want, this is optional, you don't have to do this. In solid mode, if you scroll down to settings in your materials, pop open that, I can change the viewport color to be like red. And this might run quicker on your computer, but this you don't have to do. So for now, let's just leave it in material. The last thing is this hull and these engines, they don't have much like texture and dirt or grunge, which we don't need much, but we want to add a little bit of variety to give it some detail. So I'm going to drag up this timeline and go into my node editor. And right now I have my pink plastic material selected, so I'm going to click hull, and this is my hull material. And in you guys, I sent you this texture in that download, so it's called hull low, and we can just drag that into your, you could also Shift A, add image texture, image texture, but we just drag it in and link that up. And if you go into rendered, you see nothing has happened because we did not unwrap this model at all. So now the shortcut I like to use is Control T, and it pops up our texture coordinate and our mapping. But you could just go into input, and that's where your texture coordinate is, and then vector mapping, and that's where your mapping is. So by default, you can see it's looking for a UV map, so like an unwrapped. You could look at it as like, I'm not sure what that stands for, but just think of it as unwrapped vertices or something. But we'll just use the generated, which means it by default will generate coordinates. So that right there is looking kind of cool. But I want some more seams, so I'm going to change the scale of this. to be like 2, which means basically the ship will be like 2 times bigger than the original texture. That looks better to me. Let's see what happens when we put it on this piece though. So if you click your saucer and hit new texture, we can just click this drop down menu and set it to hull. So cool. That looks okay. But the thing is, it's too like dirty, and obviously a circular object wouldn't have these horizontal bricks, but this is just, we're just trying to make it kind of quick and dirty. So let's drag out our image texture. And for now, we're actually not going to plug it into the base color. Let's for now just worry about our bump mapping and our roughness and our specularity. So specularity means how much of it is reflective. If you turn specular all the way down, it means there will be 0 reflections. If you turn it all the way up, it's like a fully reflective. So by default, it's 0.5. But if we add a converter and color ramp, what I'm going to do is make the seams not reflective. So with the Node Wrangler add-on, if you hold Control, Shift, and click, it will plug this node basically into an emission shader so we can visualize what that texture looks like really quickly in the viewport. So anything black, I'm going to plug this into the specular, and anything black will mean it's not reflective, and anything white means it's reflective. So I'm just dragging those points in. So it's mostly white, but there's some non-reflective parts. So I'm going to drag my principle back into the surface, and you can kind of see already there's parts where it looks like it's not reflecting. So that is good. Let's duplicate this color ramp, so Shift D, and drag our image texture into it. And I'm going to Control Shift click. So now I'm focused on the roughness. So roughness means 0, black means 0, so totally shiny. White means fully rough, so like totally diffuse, no shine at all. So I want these creases and stuff to be like the roughest part. So I'm going to flip this color ramp with this flip color ramp button. And now wherever it's really white, it'll be fully rough. So I'm going to drag that into the roughness, drag my principled, and now we see some interesting reflections on our ship. If you're not seeing any reflections, it might be because you deleted your lamp, but just leave, if you have it, just leave it. Let's see. And the best way to see reflections is to like be on the opposite side of your lamp. So there we go. So I'm back in my saucer. So you guys can just tweak these values until you think you have something cool. Okay, so the last thing is let's add some color back into this base color. So I'm going to duplicate this color ramp again, plug this in here, Control Shift and click to see kind of what I'm looking at. And if we were to plug this in as it is, we get too much texture. So I'm just going to try to gray things out a bit. So that does not look good to me. I think it's just, yeah, that looks better. Okay, so let's make this look like space now and kind of see what we're getting to. Go to your world settings. There's a little Earth, and just click that color and drag it all the way to the bottom. Okay, so that's looking interesting. Get out of rendered mode, click this light, and go into where that material setting used to be and change it to a sun. And if you split your view, you can, I'm going to just rotate my sun on the Y. And let's put some stars in the background. So in your world setting, if I click use nodes, nodes pop up. And if I click this input socket and go to environment texture, an environment texture pops into the color input. So I'm going to go to the textures. I sent you a stars 8192 by 4096. And now we have some stars. Let's